Okay, so setting up the meeting. Okay, we're live. So, aloha kako. I am Adam Keawe Manalo-Camp, and I'm here with three esteemed guests. The first is Kumu Hina, who everyone in the Hawaiian community knows and respects. So, aloha Kumu Hina, and thank you for coming here.
Aloha.
Next, we have um, uh, Next, we have Shanty Sigrah Asher, who is the Pacific Islander Liaison Officer for the City and County of Honolulu. And you're also with the Board of Education, is that correct? And your ancestry comes from Koshrai and from Pohnpei, right? So thank you for being here. And next we have Auntie Ino, or Innocenta Sound-Kikku, who is the Vice President of the Micronesian Health Advisory Coalition. And your ancestors come from Lukunor, Chuk, and the Federated States of Micronesia. Is that correct? So mahalo for being here. So I wanted to get, I wanted to open up a dialogue between our two communities, our Kanaka Maoli community and the Micronesian community. As you know, there has been discrimination against Micronesians, and there has been a lot of misunderstanding between our two communities, and that has also played out in the responses that have come towards the Micronesian community in the time of this pandemic. So I wanted to first open this question up to Kumuhina. Um, from a Kanaka Maoli perspective, what are some misunderstandings or uh, general stereotypes you hear from our community about Micronesians?
Mahalo nui a oe e Keawe no ko ho'oki pa mai kai mai a mākou ma keia papana keia iahi nei. A mahalo no ke lani nau. Um, I didn't quite expect that question because for me to recount the things that I have heard said about our Pacific brothers and sisters are absolutely hurtful. And, you know, we as Pacific people, we must have our heart uh, for those of us who come from the Moana Nui. Some of our own Kanaka, people in my circles, I've heard them, um, you know, have said uh, things that would hurt me to repeat, but you know, saying that people are no class or have no hygiene or no um, how do I say it, dirty people. You know, we all come from the Pacific, and it hurts me to think about that. And in fact, as someone who has been looked to for leadership in our community, I am ashamed that some of our very own would not remember to have aloha. The people who come from these islands of of that part of the Moana Nui, some of the primary reasons that their lives are now here in Hawaii and spread across throughout the US and abroad is because of what the United States of America has done to their people. And now we Kanaka and other Kamaaina almost automatically, without even thinking about what an odd reality that is, to now criticize other Pacific Islanders because we don't understand. Well, when I say we, many of our own people don't understand their history. They don't understand the rules of etiquette and the rules of engage you know in and amongst our brothers and sisters from this region. Even I myself, I have to learn when I engage with people, and I can only say that you know I truly feel hurt for some of the ways that our people have treated you. And whoever is going to be watching this, I apologize on behalf of our our people and some of the unkind things. And when I think about one of the greatest contributions, Papa Maupi Ailub, for our people, he comes from Satawal. And if not for that man choosing to go against the the mandate told to him, he went against the directive told to him. He was told not to share certain information out, but he did. And had he not done that, we would not have the some of the things that we have today. Our Hokulea and Polynesian Voyaging Society, that knowledge that was fueled by the ability of our ancestors to navigate the Pacific, was largely um, brought back to life by Papa Mau. So our Kanaka in Hawaii are indebted always to Papa Mau and our brothers and sisters from this region. So for all of our Kanaka and Kamaaina listening to this, I say to you all, think well and think hard about how we treat our brothers and sisters, because I am a product of the legacy of Papa Mau. There are direct ways and indirect ways, and I am one of those products. So I am indebted. But I can keep going on and on. Thank you, Mahalo, for asking me that question.
Mahalo. For that. Well, I didn't expect to be crying this early in the show, but um, I remember Shanti. I had a conversation with you before about how some of the rhetoric about Micronesians affects you as a mother, and I wanted to ask you about how do you still feel about that?
Thank you, Adam. I'll go ahead and pay my respect to the people of Hawaii, our host, and every people and Hawaiians, Native Hawaiians who understand the pain that many of us go through on a daily basis for the past decade. And so I wasn't planning to tear up this early, but I think it is right that we start off on that note, because that's why we're here. And I want to thank you, Kumuina, for your very heartfelt, sincere, and aloha. And Adam, I'm very honored to be here with you, Kumuina, very respected member of Native Hawaiians, and Ino, a very respected mother of our nation here. I am very young to be talking to represent the voices that we have here and all the people that have gone through so much to be here. But I've seen it. And so when being asked, these are always opportunities for us to exchange and just talk story, because if people are listening, then some will probably understand something that they never understood before. So I just want to say thank you, mahalo, for the humility and for believing that we deserve to have this conversation with you and everyone who's following and listening right now. Adam has been at the forefront defending, educating, and trying to make sense of a lot of things for us. Because many times in our culture, many of us are grounded in humility, respect, and being defensive, aggressive for many of the Micronesians is not something that we were taught to do. So we really appreciate you, Adam. And I speak for many of us too. And for Kumina, because I'm sure she shared the education piece wherever she's at, whenever she hears something. So mahalo. As a mother, I came here in 99, and at that time it was very hard. In 1999, at that time, it was very hard for an islander who has never lived somewhere else before to leave her family and had to survive somewhere else where family is the one thing that sustains us. And I can say that looking back, not having a lot of Micronesians at the time, I would feel that it was a blessing, even though it was not, because I didn't really feel that family was near me. There was not many. So when I bump into a Kosrayan or a Micronesian, we always get so excited. But today, seeing it now, while it is really good that we have a community that supports each other, the comments that always come up, as a mother, I do not want my kids to grow up thinking that hate is a Pacific thing, that hate is something cultural for me. And I want them to grow up being proud Micronesians. But it's very tough right now because many of them are ashamed to be one. They try to look so different and try to fit in just so that they do not have to be bullied, so that they can be seen as intelligent, so that they can feel as if they belong. So it is hard for a mother, for a sister, and for someone that loves our country and our people to see this and to hear. When I go to schools to talk, I hear it from these kids. And, you know, many people came here because this is the closest that they could go to feel the culture and the values that we were brought up in. And many moved not by choice. They moved because a promise was made for mutual respect. And we always easily trust. And so we came here, and many people have lived here for the longest time, and they try to survive so much. So as a mother and being on the board of education, I want to believe that I've learned so much too, that even with all these things going on, the hatred, the discrimination, God is still here. There is still aloha, and there are still amazing Native Hawaiians that are around us. And that's why we can still have this kind of conversation. And that's why I could be a board member. So thank you very much, Adam, for the question.
Thank you. Auntie, you know, coming from the perspective of a mother, a grandmother, and a Chuukese woman, how has the experience living here has been for you?
Iro Vairo Lepungalan. How do I follow those two amazing and very heartfelt talk from the two sisters and aunties and mothers of our community. You can say I am a grandmother to many Micronesian kids or many Pacific Island kids. I don't want to talk too much on that because then I will give away my age. That's not a good thing to ask a woman. No, I'm just joking. I will not repeat what Shanty have shared because the story across the border is similar. Kumu, I wanna thank you from the bottom of my heart for setting this beginning of our conversation to make this relationship between us pono, because that's very important. Not that I'm an expert in that, I might add, I'm still learning and I'm in denial that I'm in that age category of elder. I used to be the one running around asking for protocol to do things in our community. And now, with a blink of an eye, I'm the one now they're coming to ask me permission. And I'm like, what happened? It's so fast. Everything just went fast forward. But I will tell you this, Adam. It's really, really important for us to look at our ancestry, look at our relationship, and focus on our similarities instead of our differences. Indeed, we have so much that is similar. I like to look at the first time that I first came out here. I live in the housing area. And you know, when somebody approached me and said, hey, brah, you get kuara? I definitely don't understand what that means. And I'm looking at them like, I don't know what you're asking me. And then the next thing that comes out said, what, do you like beef? I know what beef is. I said, oh no, thank you. Because I thought they're offering me something to eat. Now, believe you me, that's not what they were offering me. They wanted to rearrange my face. I find that out much, much later. But I was still content and happy with everything else. I didn't know what it feels to be discriminated against. I was just at awe at everything else that is before me. The high sky, the tall buildings. In fact, my first time in the airport, I looked at my dad and I said, are you sure we're in Hawaii? Where's the coconut tree? I'm imagining somebody sitting under the coconut tree with an ukulele and gonna be singing some, local songs. Those were the things that I was looking forward to. But as I was going to school here, I didn't see anybody sitting under the coconut tree and singing the tune of the islands. But there wasn't anything as bad as it is today, where you walk down the street and then you hear somebody call out to you, hey, cockroaches, go home. Back in the days where I was here for college, there wasn't anything like that. But today, I'm so afraid for everybody. I remember walking into one of the welfare office because I was navigating assistant for somebody, and I was wearing my chuki skirt, and the lady at the front desk just totally ignored me. And I'm thinking she just has something to do, so I waited patiently for her to address give me her attention. And then she finally, when she's done on the phone and she turned around and talked to everybody else, I said, excuse me, I need help. And she literally gave me this hand signal to hold it and not wanting to talk to me. Now, mind you, this person is not Hawaiian, and this person is not Polynesian, but still the fact that it's happening in an aloha state is unheard of. It's very shocking. Fast forward to the time of the basic health Hawaii, where we were literally singled out as if the government gave permission to everybody else to rat on us or just beat on us and just hated on us because we were singled out with the healthcare. I felt like that was the moment when the shift changes and the recognition of those discriminations started to surface, and people were throwing rocks into the RMI Council compound, hateful words. Imagine if this was another group of people, there will be already some kind of rally about it. But we were just quietly trying to figure out, why are they so mad at us? What did we do wrong? And then now we are today. COVID-19, and the situation hasn't changed. In fact, it escalated to a whole nother level that I'm even afraid to say that it might be true. That what you mentioned on Facebook about medical discrimination is even possible because of the fact that we are seeing many of our brethren falling through the cracks and not given the uh, you know assistance that is supposed to be given to them. I just worried so much about those kind of things, and I want to be optimistic that because this whole pandemic is not discriminating of who to hit, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of your sex or whatever. It doesn't discriminate you. It will hit you once it chooses to hit you. So I I just wanna thank you, Adam, and I wanna thank you, uh, Kumu, for this space that is given to us so that we can share our heart. And I, I believe that something good is gonna come out of this conversation. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Mahalo.
I wanted to, Auntie Ino, I wanted to go back to a point that you had made when you were talking about when the state began to cut off um, COFA citizens from Medicaid, Medicare. Back in that was in 19, that was under Abercrombie, correct?
Yeah, Governor Lincoln, Linda Lincoln.
Oh, lingo. Okay.
Lincoln.
Um,
Sorry, I.
no, 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 no. Do you believe that since that time? So this is how I see it. Being prejudiced against Micronesians is still very much acceptable within our local community. And having worked for the state government, um, I can say that I've had co-workers before who have said things about Micronesians, or they're just such a waste. They're this and that, and I know that sometimes it's even hard for Micronesians to get translator services. Um, State officials will purposely ignore Micronesian requests just for different things. And then I've heard about from my friends that at hospitals there's a tendency for nurses and doctors, if like for example a Micronesian is having difficulty breathing or it has pain or something like that, they'll think that the Micronesian is exaggerating. I've heard stories about that. Have you also heard stories like that?
Yes, definitely. there's a lot of stories similar to what you just say. But there are many stories that are not being told either, because for fear of one might not getting the assistance or the services that they're needing. I remember one service provider even questioning the fact that why is, Micronesian women keep having children. They need, the only reason why they're having children is because they want to be on welfare. Well, let me tell you the reason why they're having children, because that is our nation. They are the ones that birth our nation, birth our people. And it is within our culture that the more children you have, you are blessed. If you have one child like me, you're not blessed. You need more than one, so that many hands working together accomplish a lot. There is a saying in our language, Chukis culture, that says, "Aramas cakagang, angang cak aramas," because it really talks about how we need to invest in our people, invest in people instead of investing in item, investing in the many hands that will come together and work together to accomplish a lot. So that's why we have to have a lot of children, not because of welfare.
If I might say something to what she had just said to us, I would like to call upon all of our Kanaka out there who might be tuning in, that we too have that very same value, and it is called laulima. Many hands make small work, and that we all come from our Kanaka families. I am a product of my mother's on my mother's side, my Hawaiian side of the family. My grandmother was the last girl of 16, and my grandfather was the first boy of 14. So we also have that same culture, that to have many children was, number one, a great blessing and a great honor. It speaks to the ability and the prowess of our people to proliferate. When a family could proliferate and be upon the aina, it meant that we had the hands to labor and toil on the aina, because we take care of the land and the land will take care of us. So there was enough hands to plant, to fish, to grow, and to do all the things that we needed. But as we have seen, and so disparagingly, our own Kanaka, our own, even our own other Pacific Islanders, and other people who have come to know Hawaii as their birthplace, that so many have assimilated to American ways, and the American indoctrination of having no tolerance, no understanding for diversity of culture, to look at someone's dress and to immediately be negative towards the way you dress. Shanty, you said that now the generation now tries to look so differently, and I would say to our fellow Hawaiians that we too, my own grandparents, you know, there was a practice of avoiding giving Hawaiian names. Avoiding giving Hawaiian names because you had to hide the fact that you were brown. You had to hide the fact that you are Kanaka. That's in my grandmother's generation. I'm 48 years old. My grandparents now would be well over 100. My mother, who's sitting next to me, is 74 this year. So we are not far, us Hawaiians, we are not far from that. We in 1896, the first efforts to ban our Hawaiian language from being spoken and being told to dress and to speak and to act like Americans and like foreigners. And I would say that the Americans did a great job. You know, that's why my people act the way some do to your people. But it really isn't my people and your people, it's our own people, because we are all Pacific Islanders. Many of our people don't even, especially for Hawaiians, don't see ourselves as Pacific Islanders. Everyone sees themselves as American coming from the continent, and I challenge everyone listening to think about it. If you are proud to be Hawaiian and you have feel some kind of way when you see our flag flying, think about what makes us Kanaka. Think about the values that we should have, and we should have respect for people who still retain language and culture. You are fortunate that you can still speak your language. Okay, I better stop now
Oh no,
before
not at all, not at all.
going.
I mean, it's not even. I mean, I'm not much younger than Kumuhina, but even myself, my first language was Hawaiian, and during that time we didn't have immersion schools, and I was put into English as a second language classes because of that, because Hawaiian was still technically legally not allowed to be the medium of instruction. Despite the fact that it was made an official language in 1978, it took another lawsuit in order to bring it back into the schools in as a medium of instruction, and that was not for another 6 years afterwards. So I mean, but even with that, I want to touch upon this idea about shared values, shared histories. I mean, like for myself, so most Micronesians they probably know me from articles about history. Most Hawaiians probably know me from articles about history. But um, one of the places in Micronesia that has a very close affinity to Hawaii in terms of history is actually Koshrai because of our missionary presence. That but our missionary presence from Native Hawaiians also carried over into the Marshalls, into the Mortlocks and Chuk, into Kiribati, and we have a very long history, even unwritten history, even before that probably, of voyaging. And as Kumuhina had mentioned about Papa Mau, Mau Pialug, he was from Satawal, but ethnically, Outer Islander Yapis are closer to Antiino. They're Chukis, basically. And, we slam Chukis here a lot, Chukis and Marshallese, but it is those people that, especially the Chukis and the Outer Islanders, that gave us back um, our maritime skills, you know? Um, I just feel like we've, exactly what Kumuhina has said, that as Native Hawaiians, we sometimes have forgotten that we are Pacific Islanders too. And we are related by language, by blood, and by shared histories to Micronesians. And we even share a lot of, unfortunately, we share a lot of the same colonization. But for Micronesians, you guys have had how many colonizers? Four?
More than that.
But um, yeah, and having lots of children. My mother is the last of 16 children. And to me, that doesn't point to, some sort of poverty or anything like that. It points to blessings, but also points to the resilience of our peoples. Because back in the 19th centuries, all of our peoples, Micronesian and Polynesians, Melanesians, we were all being decimated by introduced diseases. And it's only now that Native Hawaiians were coming to levels that are similar to what we had in 1778. Only now, after 200 years. And I know that in Koshrai, please correct me if I'm wrong, Shanty, but your people's Koshraians were also decimated by introduced diseases to the point where there was like 500 Koshraians left on the island when the missionaries arrived. That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So also because Kumihina, Shanty's family is from the Sigrah family. which is a royal clan within Lelu. And so, um, and I'm just, it's really frustrating to me that we have these divisions between our people because even the names Micronesia and Polynesia, they're imaginary, you know, they're not our names. Those were names that our colonizers gave us to divide us. And I just want to make that also clear for all the listeners and the viewers that, you know, we have to decolonize ourselves. And that also means our, we have to embrace the ocean again. You know, we are an ocean people. We're an island people. What's wrong with that?
Keawe,
Yes.
I think that it's important for our people to consider our own history.
Mhm.
And if our own Kanaka will think back to a very brief timeline, we will recall that we saw our own people forbidden from speaking our language.
Mhm.
And this is upon the heels of the imprisonment of our queen. This is upon the heels of loss of political independent power. This is at the loss of control of our land and politics, all at the directive and at the will of greedy foreigners. And yet, we today, well, not only greedy foreigners, but there were also other factors that came in to influence our own people to make the kinds of decisions that they did. Um, when we look at, for example, our Mo'i Kane Kalakaua, what did he say? Ho'olulahui. Ho'olulahui to proliferate the nation. And so we too should recall these things before, we look at we look at others with disdain for that. However, it gets very difficult to have that kind of approach and that kind of discipline to do that. Why? Because we have been taught to embrace the aspects and the elements of Western culture and have very much made it our own. In attitudes towards language. When I was in school, I was questioned as to why I was taking Hawaiian in school, and I was questioned as to by my own family what was I going to do with it, that I would never be able to make a living off of it, that it would never serve me any good. And I think that when we when we look at the system that we Kanaka are now having to try to not only reconcile, but we try to endure this system, part of the resentment that comes from our own Kanaka is that even in that system, it's extremely difficult for our Kanaka to survive. I remember when we started to see the numbers of people coming from the areas of what we acknowledge as Micronesia. And when it comes to accessing services and when it comes to being present and getting jobs, well, the reason why many of our Micronesian brothers and sisters were getting jobs is because our Hawaiians were looking for other jobs. Why? Because we're taught not to value those jobs. Why? Because we're taught to aspire to different things, but yet um, we're still island people. So we ourselves really really need to consider what we embrace and what we accept as an appropriate kind of education that is fitting of us as Pacific Islanders, but also more importantly, that what steps will we take towards decolonizing our minds and our hearts so that we no longer have this kind of attitude, because it's quite shameful that our people have when you said to be called cockroaches, I've heard that so many times. I'm absolutely offended and I'm absolutely insulted by the fact that our Kanaka and Kamaaina would say such things, because apparently our own island people from here have forgotten how non-brown people have looked at us, the same disdain that some of our own people look at our brothers and sisters from Micronesia is the same disdain and prejudice, and we experience the same discrimination that our own elders faced here. You know, to have to list yourself as cosmopolitan instead of acknowledging that you're Hawaiian or that you're Kanaka. And thank you for one of my viewers who put that out there. I really think that our own Kanaka need to do a better job. We all do, to set leadership not only for our Kanaka, our Lahui Kanaka, but the rest of our Pacific brothers and sisters who need us to step it up. And there are people in power. They are in political and economic power that look at the way the response to COVID-19 has been handled. Really, there was no consideration given to the fact that most of us who would be most heavily impacted by COVID-19 have the kind of communal-based life that leaves us far more prone and far more susceptible to the issues that come with COVID-19. And we're also in the economic demographic that also more greatly precludes us to that susceptibility. So we get punished, you know, and we have no other alternative. To ask a Pacific Islander to isolate is nearly impossible. We can't even isolate because if we don't live together and help each other and laulima, then we'll never survive.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Moina was saying earlier with, you know, they were saying, one thing that I highlighted within the education system is my daughter's interpretation of being in ELL. You know, I wanted to tell her that, because if you check off that you speak two languages and English is your second language, then you are put into a program where everyone is ashamed to be in, not realizing by decolonization, you are thinking that I am intelligent and I have capacities that are way beyond what my other students, my fellow students have, because I speak more than one language. And it's how it is taught, it is how it is worded, and it is the attitude that's been common across the board that drove our kids to be thinking that they are incapable. And I told them, you be proud that you are in this program because it means you speak more than one language. It does not mean you do not speak good English, but you speak another language. And when you speak another language at home, which is it is your identity. So be proud of it. And then the other thing I wanted to just touch on quickly is, while this pandemic does not discriminate, the existing discrimination within the system for the past decade have escalated and exacerbated the impacts on our people. So I can also say that because of this pandemic, it also discriminates against us, because these existing attitude practices and the barriers with socioeconomic, legal, policy, and everything institutional, these made it so difficult for us Pacific Islander, especially my community,
it's 8 o'clock,
to be greatly impacted. So I just wanted to throw that in with what we were discussing on so far. And it's really true, you know, this pandemic, it stripped away the values that we have with all of its restriction. And people do not understand how much we are struggling, not only because of this pandemic, but because of the divide that we're experiencing within the restrictions and the requirements that are being shoved on us because of this virus. Thank you.
I wanted to play a short clip from the Lieutenant Governor, and then I wanted to ask Auntie Ino and Shanty for your responses.
No volume. No volume.
Adam, can you adjust the volume?
You
Okay,
may
so
wish
it played.
to
Okay,
paraphrase what he was saying.
okay. So he was the lieutenant governor, in his infinite wisdom, was talking about how certain cultural practices um, have disproportionately affected Micronesians. At first, the thing that's been irritating me, and please, Auntie, um, help me out on this. Why does the Department of Health refuse to say Micronesian? They keep on saying Pacific Islander. I mean, and it's clear that they mean Micronesian. And where did the lieutenant governor get this idea that so Coach Ryan it's Saka, and in Pohnpeian it's Sakau, and in Hawaiian it's Ava? Where did he get those ideas that all Micronesians are are Ava drinkers?
That's a very good question that I want to ask him myself. So, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, or I'm not trying to, be mean to him or anything. But when I learned that he he got sick, I was thinking, oh, so now they're gonna say that he's Micronesian too, and I'm okay with that, because he keep talking about Micronesian, he keep talking about Pacific Islander. I wonder what he will feel when he is in that situation. It is an unfortunate um, thing that happened to him, because I know he really tries his best, but I think he's just learning also how to be culturally sensitive to all of this naming, and maybe that's why he's trying to just generalize and say Pacific Islanders, even though he mean Micronesian. You know, I I'm hoping for the best, but to tell you the truth, I don't really know why. So, you know, prayers to him and his family. Hopefully, they will be all right. I mean, they will be all right. I know that. I mean, we keep saying it that this pandemic is not discriminating against who to hit. So let's come together and work together and figure out how it can best help us instead of divide us. That's my main thing is, if we get out of this situation, we should learn how to come together to be one, instead of buying into the false idea that we need to be separated, and we need to single each other out and not be working with each other to address this kind of situation. Thank you.
Shanti, what is your response to the lieutenant governor? And I mean, you're part Pohnpeian. That's your culture.
Um, well, it really shows the level of education that we must continue to promote and excel within the communities, because you would think that leaders would at least understand and know the difference. With so the kava is used for within the Polynesian community. That's how they call it. While they are the same, they're called differently. And sakao is what Pohnpeians do traditionally, and it's not all of them. What I wanted to just highlight is back in Pohnpei or in Micronesia, when they take sakao, it's in a coconut shell. That is the traditional way, and then they pass it around. But because we can't practice similar traditions here, many of them, I do not drink sakao. Um, But what I observe is they do each have their own bottles to drink, and I think that's a big misinterpretation or misunderstanding with what he said. And I hope that opens up a space to at least learn the differences between our culture, because knowing makes a lot of difference when we lead and we try to affect change, positive changes within our communities, and bridging our local communities within the Pacific Islanders and also the bigger Hawaii community.
Do you think also, Shanti, since you're the Pacific Islander liaison officer, it also points to kind of denial and victim blaming, um, because 2/3 of minimum wage earners in Hawaii are Micronesian, Filipino, Native Hawaiian, Samoan, and Tongan. And these are also the minimum wage earners are also the ones who are essential workers. Like, you go to any fast food restaurant on this island, you go to any supermarket on this island, you go to any L&L or Korean barbecue place, there's going to be Micronesians, and they're essential workers. They're forced to work during the pandemic. It's not necessarily that they're sitting around and drinking kava. Um, it's because they're being exposed. And I know of 7 cases already of Micronesians, and all of them caught it from work. And I was wondering if this is also true in your experience, Auntie Ino and Shanti.
You can go first.
Yes, it's true. What you just said, it's very true. And to add to that is that I know they're still trying to figure out how to work with it and how to address this pandemic. But we're the one who's getting the effect of it. And we cannot figure out how come it takes so long for them to figure it out. It's a no-brainer that if somebody is gonna be affected, they really need to isolate that person, because if he goes home, he's gonna infect the rest of his family. And I remember one of the elders who brought this question up in one of the gatherings, and he really wanted to make sure that if somebody was sick, that they were given them the opportunity to tested, and they don't know yet that they're positive or negative, that they should get a place, put them in a place where he doesn't have to infect others. His question that night is, if I go in to get tested tonight, and then what's gonna happen to me during those 3 days? I'm gonna be waiting around for my result. And we also know now that those 3 days are the most critical days that it's gonna be transferable to the next person if they don't address it. So those 3 days is really critical, and yet what are they gonna do to them? And the question until today is not being answered. But the elder came back to me and said, why is it so hard? That why can't they just put him in the hotel and let him wait out the 3 days so he doesn't have to infect anybody else? Why can't they just hold him for those 3 days? If he's negative, send him home. But if he's positive, hold him back, and then, assist the rest of his family. Now that comes from a community, because they're thinking already, how do we help our people? We're the one who's gonna get affected by this anyway. So why can't you figure this out this soon? Because this waiting 3 days and this going back is what makes it harder. You go back and get on the bus and go down to wherever you're gonna go. how many people you're gonna meet along the way and you're gonna infect. It's not our culture. It's the fact that we're not handling it properly to contain it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
Adam, I just wanted to add, when you asked earlier about the sakao and the kava comment, I I wanted to know if there is clear evidence to show that people who were drinking kava or sakao spread this disease, because I think it is very unjustified, because we have, like Auntie Ino was saying earlier, and you also alluded to, there within our communities, we have the essential workers. And then because we are Pacific Islanders and we have low income and wages, we cannot afford the expensive apartments and houses here. So what there is a correlation. You go to work, you're putting yourself at risk, you bring a virus home, not intentionally, because you can be contagious and not know. And then you come home to a small living quarter, and then the possibilities are, because the symptoms don't show immediately, but you're contagious. If you have it, you're already spreading it. And then you get tested. By that time, some people, because of the barriers within the institution and things were not in place, the unpreparedness and slow responses from the state, these people will call and they have to wait. They wait for about 5-7 days for the state to call them back. And guess what? How many people were in that household and they end up leaving not knowing? All of this is not knowing. And then the state is still not said. There are still vacant rooms, and they cannot even put people that felt the symptoms and went to their primary care physicians. And maybe they said that you carry some symptoms, but wait in your home. We do not have the luxury to isolate in a different room, okay? We do not have the luxury to have another restroom for myself, because we cannot afford to have those. Those are luxuries for many of us. So these are other factors that are these are facts. But why aren't we not talking about it? So hopefully with the position that the city and county provided here, hopefully there is more connection within our community so that these resources are not just known, but whatever challenges, you always say, we have all these resources, go ahead and apply, go ahead and call this number. But the problem is always, what were the impact? If the person did call the number, did they get placed immediately? We don't know. So hopefully with the collaboration between the county and our local community, we can hear all these stories. And it is I pray that this position gives us that platform to express our concerns and it's solved immediately. Or else there's no point of me sitting here too, functioning as a liaison, because we're just being hopeful and wishful for something. So with the plans for reopening, I hope that with this position in working together and all these resources and grants that are out there from CARES funding to address isolation, immediate responses, quarantining, food distribution, all these things, that it is in place before the reopening. Because once we all go out, the Pacific Islanders will continue to be impacted. So that's those are the important factors that can be justified on data or surveys, but it's not kava. It's not.
yeah, just two quick things. One, I actually contacted the Lieutenant Governor's office to ask where he got the data from. They haven't responded yet. They probably don't like me very much right now. And the second thing is contact tracing. Um, how has the contact tracing been within the Micronesian community from what you both know, Shanty and Innocenta, Auntie Ino?
Well, first of all, when we heard about the contact tracing, that's confusing in itself. And then when we found out that some of our community, Pacific Islanders, approached them and say, why don't you hire our people to help you navigate this? And then they were given, the answer that they cannot do that because they have to go through certain protocols. They have to have certain degree or whatnot. Well, I'll just say in our Micronesian community, we don't have that high percentage of master's degree or bachelor's degree. Most of the ones that have their degree, they're already working and doing what they have to do. So um, not working with the Pacific Islanders to provide those services that is needed is probably one of the reasons why that contact tracing is not working out well. Although it's a need and it's important, but it's not many people who understood what that contact tracing is all about. I, I personally have called and then I was asked, is the person on the investigation, list? And I'm thinking, why are you asking me that question? I'm a community calling to ask, oh, what can you do for this person who is positive? Because in my mind, I'm thinking if you get tested positive, your information is already with you, with the DOH or whoever needs to access service for that person is supposed to be in place once they know that this person is positive. But then they have to call people that they trusted and say, can you navigate for me? Like, can you help me? It's been 7 days. It's been this long and nobody called me. They said that they will call me and I'm still waiting for that call. And even for me, when I heard that you need to be on the list for investigation, I'm thinking, who's gonna do the investigation? I thought the contact tracers are the one who's doing all of that. That's why we're calling this number, the care number or whatever that number was. But many fall through the cracks and are not given the services until the time is already up for them. And, it's already 7 days, 14 days. Well, it's getting better, but we're still seeing a lot of people not being helped.
Well, we have a word for that in our culture. Mapupunoy kako kailaan olelo palanayo. Lo. The word is not a nice word, palanayo.
Mm.
But
Oh.
that's true about the contact tracing and the degrees. Native Hawaiians, Micronesians, we don't need a degree. We have genetic memory from the last 4 pandemics that we've survived. And if you want to get information from our community, you get a bunch of kupuna together with telephones, get a bunch of elders, they get you all the information throughout the whole community in one day. Just give them some food, a phone, they'll get it done.
That's exactly right.
What is confidentiality?
But you see, therein lies the problem, Keawe, and that is for our viewers who are watching tonight. I challenge all of you to think, and I hope that this video goes far and wide, so that somebody along the line who's out there, either responsible or able to impact how decisions are made. People need to give greater respect and greater cognizance of our existence, just by fact that things were not done in a very logical and systematic way. For however many primary languages there are out of the region that we call Micronesia, what the languages are, there should have been something in place. And you can't look to anybody with any kind of Western degree unless they're actually from that community, and they have to be respected by that community. Just because somebody has a degree doesn't mean the people like them. or the people will respond to them. It's no different than in the Hawaiian community.
Mhm.
Our Hawaiian community, we have many people that have what we call palapala, or documents and degrees, but it does not mean that they're the most respected and beloved in the community. So um, I really think that there are several things that we need to do. One, we need to stand up on behalf of our people, and we need to raise our voice and say something. Two, I think that wherever and whenever possible, we need to urge, or we could demand that um, that attention be paid, and that it's imperative, because otherwise, who's the very people that are the frontline responders? Police, fire, ambulance. In the Hawaiian community, there's a great number of our numbers in those jobs. And then in the Micronesian community, there are all over the place in doing the jobs that everybody else's don't want. But our island people, and mind you, Hawaiian, Samoan, Tongan, and all of the rest of us, we are all Pacific Islanders. So Pacific Islanders applies to us. We come from the cultures that are not reflected in the intervention methodology and conceptualization of what the current government is doing. Now, I get it. You darned if you do and you darned if you don't. And if the people in political power don't know any better, they'll never know any better, because they don't even have the capacity to think like that, right? But the more we speak up and the more we say something, I hope that they're going to listen. Because, well, coming from the Kanaka perspective, this is our home. There was no cognizance and no effort to really try to have methods that would be appropriate for our Kanaka community. If they managed to do that, they might have done far better with the rest of our Pacific Islander brothers and sisters. So I urge all of our people that are tuning in tonight that what can the everyday person do? We can start by having a different approach and a different outlook. And we can look at those of us who are islander, no matter what island we come from, as people that we should have at least a minimal level of aloha and respect. And that aloha starts with a smile. And we have to understand that we're different. We have to understand that all of our cultures come rather bombarded with influences that pull us away from our traditional cultural attitudes, our cultural practices, and our cultural way of life. But we have to be able to not repeat the very same things that put us in the boat as our colonizer. We can't do that, and we should not do that. It's wrong to do that against our own fellow Pacific Islanders. And what else can we do? We can start to set different kinds of leadership and speak to those around us, and think about the ways that we refer to people. It is true that from many sectors of our Pacific Islander community, that there's crime and that there's all kinds of activity and behavior that's not good. But it doesn't mean that we're any better or worse than the non-Pacific Islanders, But placing emphasis upon one group of islanders, to say that Micronesians are, um, are responsible for all this kind of thing is totally not right, because we have our own fair share. As somebody who teaches within the incarceration system when there's no COVID-19, who's the most highest represented in prison? Hawaiians. So, we have many wonderful Pacific Islander brothers and sisters, some who make fantastic decisions, some who set great examples, and then we have many from amongst the islands who, for whatever reason, they find themselves making other choices. So we all need to step ourselves up to do better.
I think too, as Kanaka Maoli, we need to recognize that we are dealing with our own
Yes.
trauma from our history, from colonization, everything else. But Micronesians are also doing recovering from their own trauma. And
Yes.
I just cannot imagine coming from a place like some place in like coming here, being treated, dehumanized constantly, having to adjust to this new lifestyle, and not being given the space and the aloha to be educated and to be helped. Um, I mean, it's horrible how we have mistreated our Micronesian brothers and sisters. Instead of showing our aloha and trying to help them adjust and bring them in to our ohana, we've kind of said, no, you're bad, go there. But that's not who we are supposed to be as islanders. And these Micronesians, we shared. I mean, you look at the flags, the state flags of FSM. All of those symbols are also our symbols as well. Coconut trees, the sakaubo, the fafa pounder, the poi pounder. Those are coconut tree. Those are also our symbols as well. We have much more in common than we have in differences. And the differences that we do have, there's great beauty and strength in them. And we should cherish them as well. So, with that, I just wanted to bring this to a close, but I wanted to ask Auntie Ino, first off, what can we do as Kanaka Maoli and as Kamaaina to this land to be more supportive of what your community is undergoing? How can we be more there for you? Auntie Ino,
Unmute. Unmute.
you have it on mute.
Oh,
There you are.
boy. There you go. Sorry about that technology. That's another thing. We're still learning them. So if we press the wrong button, there it goes. I thought my whole world is going to disappear in front of me too. Come back to your question. Thank you so much, Adam, for asking it. I think I forgot it.
So, how can we be supportive of of the Micronesian community, especially in the time of Corona?
I was teasing you, but because one of the things that we have in common is we love to laugh. We love to make joke about each other and about what make light of things, and we just joke about it, and then it makes it lighter than it really is. And I think we need to create more of those spaces where we can talk and laugh and cry more together. Because when we find our commonality and we find those things that we value, and we find those things that um, shows that we are not different from each other, then we click and we finally realize, hey, we are family. And I love to laugh and make jokes. So I'm sorry to that to you, but I know most Polynesian and Micronesian love to laugh and enjoy themselves. So let's create those spirit of aloha, spirit of honor amongst each other, and let let us come together and figure these things out together, not against each other, because we are indeed brothers and sisters and cousins from the islands. Thank you very much for that question.
Shanti?
And as I remember, I was speaking to one of the doctors, and she was trying to compare two situations that they were studying. And she said there were three patients that came in. One was positive, but then we tested the other two. They didn't get the virus, but then there were the specific islanders that we're in the same size of car, and there's 4 of them, and all of them got tested positive. And I said, haven't you seen how we speak and laugh? It is against the pandemic. We laugh from the bottom of it. Anyways, uh, I think that this pandemic just do not like Pacific Islanders because we cannot sing, not laugh. So, anyways, I think that just starting from the community, what we need are friends and advocates. It doesn't have to go live or on Facebook, social media, but just when you hear someone say something that may not be true, try to stand up for us. There's not a lot of us, and most of us who are so wise beyond their years cannot speak the language. They can't defend themselves. So we do need people to look out for us, our brothers and sisters. And, know that we are trying our best. Many of us are trying our best. And many of the students or kids that ended up in juvie, these are kids that have been abandoned within the system. They grew up and they should be really successful today. But that's why I wanted to take on this, the Board of Education, even if it's volunteer, even if these meetings go for 8 hours, I'm there because there has to be some people who understand what these kids are going through. So wherever you are, if you can effect change, we welcome it. And that is really the true definition of aloha. So we look forward to having more of this kind of conversation. We're really cool people. No matter what they say, many of us are just like any Pacific Islanders you've met. So mahalo. Good luck.
Kumu, Hina, do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, mahalo. Unlike our other 2 friends, Innocenta and Shanty, I'm going to approach it a little bit differently, and I'm going to speak to all of you Kanaka and other Kamaaina out there. As a fellow Kanaka, I'm looking at all of you to, again, you have heard what we spoke about this evening. And I'm going to remind everyone that we walk in far more similar slippers than different. In fact, before there was such a thing as slippers, we were all barefooted. So, Mom, you're on the camera. So, as people who once roamed barefoot in our own islands, as people who once also relied, and still do, some of us, we still rely heavily upon growing kalo and fishing and doing all of these things. Let us not forget our origins, and let us not forget who we are. Let us not forget that we can greet people with aloha. When we see people across the way, it doesn't matter who they are. Our people say, "Ai, aloha, aloha, aloha. Pea uko, how are you?" And extend the that kindness. That is the way of our people. When we're in and amongst ourselves, fellow Kanaka, and you see the person over there and they just look at you and look at them, what does that mean? That's instant grounds for asking for a fight. And you know exactly what that means. So when we Kanaka and Kamaaina, when we see our fellow brothers and sisters from whatever island that they might be from, call out to them, "Ai, aloha," and develop a different rapport. Let us teach our children not to go to school with certain kinds of attitudes that come from whom? Come from the home, come from the parents, or come from the grandparents, in terms of how we look at other people, especially the people from within the region called Micronesia. Whether it be for little idiosyncrasies of culture, whether it be for language. People make fun of, of the language that is spoken. I've heard it all over. People make fun of the skirts and the dresses and the bright, beautiful island colors that they represent. Those are not things for us to tease, because at one time we too were were put down and were discriminated against because of what made us island. So let us not forget that. Let us work harder, and let us aspire to a greater level of aloha. No leila e kia naina o ko e kipa mai nei, o wau no ke ia o kumuhina ke o lelo nei no wau ia o koa pauloa. Au hea o ko e ka lahu i aloha. O mana o ho i kako i ko kako loina ka noho ani ko kako aina hanau. Mai kako e poina. Aloha ke kahi. Ko kuaku, ko kua mai. Ai lau lima, ai mahalo i ko mea loa. I keia manawan ho i o COVID-19, na kako no e malama ia kako iho. Ina a ohe po e o mawaho na lako kako e kokua, na kako iho no. We must stick together, we must stand together, and we must learn to aspire to be better examples all the way around, no matter when we are confronted with the not so savory examples, because there's not so savory examples in all of our island groups, everyone. So mahalo, Keawe, for having us on the program with you tonight.
Mahalo. Auntie Ino, closing remarks.
Thank you so much. Tirosa fellow ami wonsan itamet sibu paluro melikun sibu sa fokun tingar ren kemi po sibu angang fangan ne kutai keanin nis kids me namas ekis me ni sina sibu eris kids ren ekki pe kinerin nis ren e osukosuk a tor kids ika porque nam narawai ye kids sibu pareris kemi Tomo par ekots narferuas ke nukun ren mainland mi paro rekaratorenis also fokun neokusika de reach out ebio pokavases sibuanga fogat tok fogat kutaveta sibu fokun sibu fokun erinis fogan nari fanson osukos. It is indeed a trying time that we are facing today. And there is nothing greater than working together as one to help one another. All our Pacific Islanders and Micronesians, all of our people are all over across the country. Here, Portland, I cannot name many of those other places, but there is help out there. And all you have to do is say, I need help. Can you help me? Doesn't matter what nationality you're from. We need to help each other to survive this pandemic. So with great aloha to everyone, I just wanna thank you, Kumu for holding our space, and Adam for generously inviting us to your site or your Facebook. I always love the things that you post, and even though I don't comment much, but I'm one of those who like and love and share your posts. I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for all that you do, standing up for our community especially.
Hello. Shanty?
Hello.
Oh, wait, Shanty. Shanty?
Magena we alla might na kayo wa in fact lo na sinkat yo bello bena baye ta mga kudin na baye se sinsilan mit na kayo wa ni kipel singa pinsha kudin ta kayo ni akya sho I kudin katang la mau besi kya na se shingi nang baye la besin la sho tena fa shwo inge na kishipen masa Tokot kampara kishoy kutintar katang la. Kutin koin civil bevelop na gimol malash. Long sa kulona sinmet na kayo wa. Kulo ke ngayon la pasyon mit ko siya kipensing. I just wanted to encourage everyone. We're going through so much right now, and the only thing left to do is to stand united. Because if we do, like my previous respectful speaker already said, this is what defines Pacific Islanders family and unity, respect and love. And that's really why it is so easy for us to meet and talk in the spaces like this. So I just wanted to encourage everyone, while this is trying times for that, especially with our culture, once we overcome this, the faster we follow the rules, the quicker we overcome, and then we'll be back to our old normal. That's really it. So I want to thank you again, Gulon Malalab, for having us here. It's an honor.
Mahalo. I wanted to thank Kumuhina for beginning this talk, being very open-hearted about how you feel. I wanted to also thank Auntie Ino, who's now my favorite kupuna in the Micronesian community, for her wisdom. And I wanted to thank Shanty for also doing what you, I know it must be tough coming to this place, dealing with all of this, and still trying to do what is right, what is pono within our community. And I want to thank you for that. Also, people may not realize this, but when I had written my article a couple of years ago about Micronesian historical ties, it was actually Coach Ryans and Pohnpeians who first reached out to me, particularly JR. I just wanted to say hi to JR.
That's my cousin.
But I have tremendous respect for Micronesians. I listen to Chuki's music because your music is awesome. I just need to say that. but and I hope that we have more dialogues and more spaces where we can just eat together, laugh together, sometimes cry because we're Pacific Islanders, and places where we can just really be, family and learn from each other as well. So mahalo to all three of you for being here, and mahalo to our viewers. And I hope if there's one thing I hope that the viewers take out of this is the need that we need to aloha kekahi ikekahi, love one another, because that's how we are going to survive, and that is how we're going to strive, is by unity. So mahalo again, you three, and mahalo to our viewers. Okay.
Oh
Aloha.
yeah. Mahalo. Aloha.